Hey YouTube, this is EA and I am back with my next video, part 2 of bridging the gap between home and school. And this part is for teachers. Parents, you're more than welcome to watch it too. As a matter of fact, parents and teachers need to watch them both. So, teachers, one sure way to bridge the gap is to have your parent package ready. Especially at the beginning of the school, you want to have a parent package together where you let the parents know exactly what's going to take place in your classroom. So you need to have like a welcome letter that includes your expectations, your responsibilities, your rewards, your goals, your homework policy, visitation policy, and especially your contact information. How you're going to update the teachers on ongoing progress in your classroom. Um, and you can do this by text message, phone calls, newsletters, classroom dojo, or the website. Most schools now have a website where teachers can access their own page so that the parents can be updated. Also, some schools use an attendance program where teachers can always go online and see exactly how their children are doing academically, so you can use those programs as well. You may just want to ask your school what their program is and if they offer this component. So that is tip number 1. Always be ready. Have these packets ready throughout the year, because I found in teaching you get children all throughout the year, and especially during testing time, for some reason we get a fluctuation of new students in our buildings. So you want to be ready because you want the parents to know what's expected of them and what you're offering to their children. And try your best to meet all of the parents. Sometimes they enroll the parents and the children ride the bus, so you don't get to meet them. Usually when that happens, I will drop them a postcard or a welcome letter, and I say in there, welcome to the school. Of course, I'm excited about teaching your student, and I can't wait to meet you. So have your packets ready. Tip number 2. Which goes along with tip number 1. I'm just going to reiterate, if you don't get a chance to meet the parents, make sure that you provide an opportunity to meet up with them. Make an arrangement to meet them. Usually, if you're very inviting, the parents will come up and meet you. Tip number 3. Teachers, do not send angry verbal messages through children's siblings. If you're angry with a student, do not find their siblings and go off on them and tell them what to tell their parents. They are not adults. They can't even handle what you say. Many of them walk away mumbling under their breath something crazy about you, and it builds an environment of disrespect. So we want to be careful how we talk to people's children. If you're upset, you need to contact the parent. I know some teachers say, the phones may get turned off, but you can still drop a note, or, you can email them or text. Even teach the parents, if they don't have an email, how to access, the email. They can always go to the library and use those computers for free. But most certainly try your best not to say anything to an older sibling, because they're not the parent and there's not much that they can do about the situation anyway. And we don't want to set up environments of disrespect like that. And last but not least, you can always use the school mail if you just have to have a note that goes out to the parent where you can't contact the parent by phone or some other kind of technology. I see this every once in a while where teachers are really upset and they attack the other students. So that's not a good thing to do to our children because they're not the adults. Tip number 4, parent calls. I do workshops. I do how to teach, how effective teaching in urban schools. So one thing that we address in the workshop is parent calls. I've heard many teachers call the parents with so much frustration, but you have to remember that you're calling the parent and the parent is not in trouble. Most of the time, the parent is handling their business and they don't deserve to get spoken to like that. You need to just think before you speak. Calm yourself down and put yourself in the parent's shoes. If it were my child, how would I want a parent to, a teacher to approach me? How would I want them to talk to me? So you need to think about that. And another thing that you can do to avoid that is get another fellow teacher and role play and go back and forth and ask the teacher, what would you feel like if I said this to you like that? So you can kind of like work that out to where you can get in a space where you have respect for the parent, they have respect for you, and you guys can have some real dialogue and change the behavior of the students in a positive way. Because if you don't and you aggressively call parents, they're eventually going to start cursing you out. So to avoid that, we want to create a win-win situation because we do need the backing of our parents because we're teaching their students and they have more control than we do. And it doesn't take them much to get their children in order. It may take us a little while, but the parents are right there. They already have the expectations, so you can use that as a plus. Tip number 5. Teachers, when you talk about students and their families in front of the students, you damage their self-esteem. When you talk about the students in front of other teachers, you set the other teachers up for failure because many of the teachers will take what you say to heart and they may even end up mistreating that student, or the student may miss out on an opportunity that could help them because the teacher thinks that their family is bad or they're bad. When students feel like you don't like them or you don't care, they will either barely work for you or not work for you at all. So children really feed off of our energy. This year I teach art. I've been a classroom teacher, but I decided to teach art. So I teach from kindergarten to 6th grade. And in each classroom, I can tell who's teaching the class based on teacher behavior. It's incredible. If the teacher is yelling to get problems solved or get the children quiet, so do the students. They do the same thing to each other. If you have the more laid-back teacher that's quiet and kind of gentle and soft-spoken, the children solve problems like that as well. They communicate like that as well. If you have teachers that don't have any classroom control, their children are up all over the place, you can tell because the teacher is generally yelling and using threatening language. So it's important how we act in front of our students because they most certainly pick up on our ways and our characteristics. If you just flat out don't like your students, they will show that as well because they'll talk about you to everybody else. So you want to be careful of what you're saying about the students and their families. You want to keep it positive, even if negative things are going on or you think it's the students, if you think the students have bad behavior because of the parents, you still want to be respectful when you address that. Number 6, which is gonna follow number 5. Now, oftentimes we complain about how the parents are rearing their children. We say a lot of things about what should start at home, and most of it is true. Learning starts at home. So as a parent, you are the first teacher. However, we have these students from 8 to 3. So we have them for a long block of time. We actually spend more quality time with the students than their parents. So I believe that if we focus on building our environments to be conducive to learning, we'll have a much better outcome rather than resorting back to the fact that your mama don't know what she's doing, your parents are not teaching you nothing, these children are so disrespectful, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. So I really believe that the power is with us. When they're at school, they're at school. I often tell my children, I don't even care what you do at home, but what you will do in here will be what we build in here. We're a community here. And you either on the inside of the community or you on the outskirts. And I have a desk that's parked on the outskirts where they can reside until somebody in the community like talks to them and pulls them back in, or they have a change of behavior and they tell me they're ready to come back into the circle. So I think as teachers, we have to build those environments. And there are several ways that you can do this. First of all, you need to learn how your students learn. You have to learn how they learn. So you can give them a learning styles test. You can just go into the search engine on a computer and put in learning styles test. It'll pull it up. It talks about kinesthetic learners, auditory learners, visual learners, students who like nature. It has about 9 learning styles, and you give the test, then you know where your students are. Then you want to build some personal information so you can do some activities where you ask them questions to see if they're the oldest child, the middle child, the youngest child. You know, you want to get information that will teach you about how they learn. You want to play games with your students. In playing games with your students, you find out who are your critical thinkers, who will endure to the end, who gives up easily. So in the beginning, you want to do these activities with your students so that you can kind of learn something about them. I have a no excuse policy. I feel like this. Your parents sent you to school. They pay me to teach. So we are working together. If your pencil is not moving, we're going to have problems. See, we're going to have problems right off the bat, right there. That's where the problem starts, because your pencil is not moving after I told you to move the pencil. So they don't even get a chance to settle in and talk to their friends and eventually start doing foolishness, because I try to set mine up in a structural way. Another thing that would help is to do celebrations often. Most children don't cooperate because they don't know what it is that they're learning. They don't know how to learn, and they don't know how to ask for help. And sometimes it's frustrating because they feel like they're so far behind, it's embarrassing. So any little gains that they make, you have to celebrate them to get that validation in, to build up their self-esteem. All of us need validation. And once we get so much validation, you know, we start to fly a little better on our own. But they most certainly need the validation. And if you're going to help them, then that's one thing you can do that'll take you far. So I'm looking at my notes real quick, and I'm going to go right to the next one. No, actually I'm not. I'm going to go back. I also do getting along together activities. Getting along together activities will allow you to see how well the children problem solve and who are the classroom like managers. You know, students will start to show you when you give them an opportunity to do things. So we do getting along together activities. There's plenty of books and activities online where the students get to know each other, where they find out what they have in common as students. I know one year I had this little girl in my class. She had a horrible attitude, but she didn't live with either one of her parents. And then I had a little boy in the class that everybody thought was fine. This was 6th grade. And he was kind of chilled out and laid back. He was kind of spoiled. But He didn't live with his parents either, and he was the more popular student. Well, the little girl had an attitude because she felt like, she was alone in this. But when she found out that he was in the same boat as her, oh my gosh, it changed the whole dynamics of my entire classroom. It was wonderful. So you want to do those activities because they most certainly can help. And because he was nice and mannerable, she started to pattern her behavior after him. And when they had rough times, they would often talk to each other about being in those similar situations. So it helped. So tip number 8, teachers, you have to teach conflict resolution. I know it should come from home. Everybody say it should come from home. It should come from home. But the reality is they probably wouldn't even do that at home with their own parents. They do it with us because they think they can get away with it. I volunteered for YBI football league, and I did like certification, and I went to a couple of games. Well, while I was at the games, I was observing the same students that are in our classrooms acting up are out on those fields. They're walking their siblings to the restrooms. They're buying food for their families. They're on the sidelines playing quietly and together and peacefully. They're in the stands cheering their siblings on. So none of the behavior that I saw at school that was negative, I didn't see any of it out there in that big family gathering. So sometimes they just get over on us and they don't know how to function in our school environment. So we have to teach conflict resolution, especially to curb all of the fighting that's going on. We have to give those children other choices. One thing that I did in my class is I had what was called Harambe time. Harambe means let's pull together. So in the mornings we would sit in a circle and have our Harambe time. There was a time for any classroom concerns or issues and any updates or celebrations. Some of the students play football, they take piano, they're in ballet or jazz. So we use that time to celebrate them if they got awards, if they took pictures at their recitals. Sometimes I would even let the children come in to perform, and that was our Harambe time, like our little family time. So that made the students build a bond also, and it lessens the classroom conflict. Tip number 9. You have to be prepared, teachers. You have to be prepared for everything. Once you get into schools that have a lot of like behavior problems or a lot of challenges, you have to sit down and come up with a plan on how to be prepared outside of just your lesson plans. So you want to have this emergency toolbox that saves you and saves your students. I had my lesson plans. I also had my brain break activities. This is when your students are, starting to get a little antsy. They're talking too much, starting to get out of control. You can take a brain break. A brain break is like a 2 or 3 minute activity where you get them up and you get them moving, or you let them write something, or you take a restroom break, or you just let them kind of relax for a few minutes and then get back on task. So you kind of let them get that energy off and then you're ready again. So I use those a lot. Another thing I did is I used the learning style to my advantage. If I knew that a child liked science, I made these little cards and I put everything on the card that I could about the students. So I put their names, birthdays, mamas, daddies, dogs, important information, things that they like, snacks, drinks, everything. And I use these cards to redirect the students. So I also put the learning styles on there. So if somebody is starting to cut up and be agitated about something, I would usually pull their card, reread it. After a while, you memorize it so it gets a little easier. And then I may say to a student who likes science, I may say, hey, can you do me a favor and take this clipboard and go over here and work in my science center for a few minutes because I have something that I want to work on you with. So, and that will stop them from bucking you because they think they're in trouble. And then after a while, I'll go over and I may even give them a project to do at home because I know they like science so much. So that's one way that I kind of kept my class under control. If a student like to lay down, if they get restless in the seats, I may say, I remember that you just like to relax when you study. You told me you like to listen to music and you just like to relax. So do you want to go over on the beanbag and, put the little headphones on, listen to your music and do your work? And of course they're going to say yes. So, I just came up with things that I thought would help them in my classroom and I started to incorporate them. Another thing is wherever you teach, you need to look at the population of the students. And then you need to learn about their culture and study the scholars of their culture. Oftentimes we go to workshops, we get information, but the information is from scholars who don't look like the children that you're trying to teach. So when I decided to go back to school, I got a master's degree in urban education. So we studied the dynamics of the urban environment, the effects that it has on the schools, why children don't really learn in urban environments. We did a lot of studies. So we got a chance to do some research. And prior to that, I'd already done some research. But for African American children, for example, we have some great scholars who have put out information about our children that absolutely works. You have people like Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, Amos Wilson, Francis Cress Welsing, and Marva Collins. And that's just like a few. That's a small list. There are a lot of people who are African American who do research on us, and they give the best techniques and information for us to learn from. So I did that, and when I do my workshops now, I train teachers on how to do effective teaching in urban environments. I use a lot of literature from African American authors and teacher trainers, and people in the workshops always thank me because they say it's very helpful to know from our perspective. And tip number 9, teachers, I would like for you to add your strategies down below in the comments section that helps you in your classroom so we can continue to build, because there's always a new teacher that's coming along that need this advice so that they can be successful, so that our children can grow. Sometimes we know that in the beginning, teachers, we sacrifice some classes, some whole classes, trying to figure it out. But if we have this information at our hands, people can come and use this as a resource. Try to make your comments as positive as possible, because we do want people to walk away with the information and not get upset and just turn away when they can really get some jewels that will help them out in their classrooms. So again, teachers, don't forget to write some positive comments on techniques that you use in your classroom to be effective. I thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.